Hey guys, welcome to the shop where we go over frequently asked questions and tips and tricks to make sure that you get the most out of your Redline bow hunting gear. My name is Wes Brown, field producer and resident bow technician for Redline Bowhunting, and today we're going to be going over access point adjustments and how to set them up properly on your bow. Now the first thing I want to go over is to make sure that whether you bought your equipment on our website or at a trusted dealer, we want to make sure that you use those dealers and or your local pro shop that you trust. These guys have the knowledge and the tools to make sure that your site and equipment get set up on your bow for your particular shooting style. This is the surefire way to make sure you get the most out of your bow hunting gear, but at the end of the day, sometimes that's not always an option. So setting up these at home can be essential to have the know-how to do it. Now, with that said, what I do and what you do and what another pro shop does may not always be the same, and that's okay. The way I do things, maybe the way I tie a D-loop or serve my peep in, may be totally different than what you're used to. But hopefully what I teach you guys today will get you out in the field, shooting accurately, and trying to get the most out of your Redline equipment. So follow along with me today and hopefully we can get some info to you to get you out shooting. The site that I'm going to use today to demonstrate all of these access points is the RL2 single pin bracket mounted site. This is my personal site that I pulled off my bow back here. It's right there. It has, in my opinion, 4 access point adjustments, and this is why we're going to use it, because we can cover most all the access points that our sites offer. Now, real quick, I'm just going to let you know, I'm not going to show you or tell you why you make these adjustments. I'm not going to give you the history or anything like that. I'm just going to get right down into the nitty-gritty and just show you guys how you need to square this site to your bow. And then you guys can look and scour the internet for maybe the reasons why, or if you like me for some reason and you want to hear me explain it, then just give us a write on our email and tell them how awesome I am and that you, you want me to give you the full background on why we make these access point adjustments. But real quick, we'll just go over all 4 adjustment points on this site and then we'll get right into adjusting them. Now for me, when I talk about 4 access points on this site, it may be different than what other people say, but for me, the first access point is where the bracket mounts to the bow. Now, as you can see here, I have a bunch of different holes that I can choose from. I'm just going to choose the 2 that are best for my style of shooting and where I like the sight to sit on my bow. Now, there's really no adjustments for the first access point because when you screw this bracket into your bow, it sits flush. Now, modern bows and modern sights should fit flush to your bow, therefore perfectly leveling it to your bow style and however it's going to sit on your bow. And that's what's important, and there's no other adjustments needed for your first access point. Now, as for the next 3 access points, we are going to have to make adjustments, or at least make sure we don't need to make the adjustments. Now, let's take a look at that second access point. If you look here, you're going to see 5 lines with an arrow. Now, all of the access points from 2, 3, and 4 all have these reference lines with an arrow. Now, the way we use these is once we make our initial setup, we're going to use those reference lines to make sure that if we're on a plane or if we're traveling or we drop the bow in the field, we can reference those lines to make sure that they were not adjusted without us knowing. So you're also going to see that there are 2 screws, top and bottom, and this is connected to the point from where the bracket meets the rest of the sight near your yardage adjustment wheel. So that's your second axis. Now your third axis is going to be up by your windage knob and the sight housing. If you look from the top down on a right-handed sight, closest to the sight housing, you're going to see a pivot screw, and then to the right of that, you're also going to see a screw with about a 1/8 of an adjustment either way. That's your third access point. Now, if you come around to the right side of the sight housing of this sight, on the top, you're going to notice that there is a screw for adjustments, just like it was on the third access point, where you have about a 1/8 of an adjustment, and then you have your pivot screw below that. Now that we've gone over all the access points on this site, now let's get into adjusting them. So before we get into adjusting our access points, we got to make sure we have the tools that we need to accomplish the task. And as you can see here, I have multiple different types of levels. You can find these at home. Just make sure they're small and they can balance on your riser and also hold up square to the string of your bow. Also, when you bought your sight, you were supplied with Allen wrenches that are specific for your sight, which will allow you to make all the adjustments necessary. The next most important thing you need is something to hold your bow square, vertically and horizontally. Now, I'm using a bow vise, and there's other ways I'm sure you can figure out at home to be able to accomplish this. Once you have all these things in hand, we can get started. So like I said before, once your sight's mounted to your bow on the riser, we're gonna go right into that second axis point that I had mentioned. So moving to that second axis point, what we're gonna do is we're gonna loosen the top and the bottom screw, but we don't wanna loosen it too much to where it moves freely. We wanna keep enough tension that when we do move it, it stays in the spot that we moved it to. Once you have it loosened, we want to make sure that our bow is vertically square. So take your level, place it on the string, and make sure that it is left and right perfectly square. Once you've done that, now look at the bubble level that's within the sight housing. That's indicating whether your sight is perfectly square at the second axis point on your bow. If that bubble level is not in the middle, if it's left or it's right, grab a hold of the sight housing and adjust it so that the bubble level becomes square. Keeping in mind not to move your bow out of its squareness in the vise. Once you've accomplished that, go back and retighten your screws, ensuring that the bubble does not move in your sight housing. Once you've tightened those up, we're ready for the third axis point. Now adjusting your third axis point. To do this, we have to get the bow in a horizontal position like this. We're going to use the string, which is the straightest line on the bow, to make sure that it is perfectly horizontal to the ground using your bubble level like this. Once it's perfectly horizontal, let's move to a flat spot on the riser and place your bubble level on it like this to make sure that it is perfectly level left and right tilt point. Now you can utilize the bubble level within the sight housing, as that will be pretty accurate. Let's loosen up the two screws at the third axis point. Once you loosen those just enough to move the sight itself, let's adjust the sight so that the bubble becomes perfectly in the center in the bubble level. Once it's perfectly centered, let's tighten those two screws back up at the third axis point, and we can bring our bow back up to the vertical position. Once you're back up in the vertical position, let's recheck to make sure that our bow is perfectly level up and down vertically. Once we've recentered our bow on our vise, let's move to the fourth axis point. At the fourth axis point, let's take our tool and loosen up the two screws at the fourth axis point. Once you get them loosened, let's take our level and place it at the outer edge of the sight housing like this. Once you have it there, we can now move the sight housing to make sure that the bubble is perfectly level as well. Once you get it there, let's tighten up those screws. And that's it, guys. Now, again, there are millions of ways to do this. There's probably only a couple truly proper ways, but this squares your sight up with your bow, and I promise it's gonna get you shooting accurately out on the archery range and in the field. But remember, this isn't the foolproof way, so make sure you make it to your pro shop so that they can hone in your sight for your particular bow and your particular shooting style. If you like what you've seen here today, make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and watch out for more videos on our Redline bow hunting equipment. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.